Basically, like every aid station I would get to where my crew was, I would eat some steak, and then I would drink a protein shake that had about a cup of heavy whipping cream in it. I didn't puke once, so that was a plus.
Welcome to the Eat for Endurance podcast. My name is Claire Shorenstein, and I'm a registered dietitian and running coach based in New York City. My goal for this podcast, aside from having fun, of course, is to demonstrate that there is no one-size-fits-all style of eating. Rather, there are many different pathways towards individualized health and sports performance. I explore this in my athlete nutrition profiles, as well as in interviews with fellow dietitians on their areas of expertise. Welcome to Season 3, our first interview. Finally getting back into recording and really excited to be welcoming back Mike McKnight, who was on the show back in Season 1. And I invited him back to the show to chat about two epic things that he achieved this year. First, back in May, Mike ran 100 miles on 0 calories. That's right, 0 calories in 18 hours and 40 minutes. So he ran it quickly as well. And then in late September, he set the men's-supported fastest known time, or FKT, on the Colorado Trail, which is about 485 miles in 7 days and 13 hours. Pretty epic stuff. So before you listen to this episode, I highly encourage you to check out my original episode with Mike back in Season 1, and it's episode number 8, to get Mike's full story and all the details on why he eats the way he does and what he eats and how he got there. He has a pretty awesome story that I think you guys will enjoy if you have not already listened to it. The very brief synopsis is he is a low-carb, high-fat athlete. And if you're wondering why me, a dietitian who never recommends that style of eating to my own clients, athletes, is interviewing yet again a low-carb, high-fat athlete, well, you know, I think just because someone eats a different way, and of course that's what this podcast is celebrating, is all the different ways that people fuel their amazing accomplishments in the athletic world. But just because I don't necessarily agree with it doesn't mean I can't appreciate and respect and, you know, be curious about the ways that other people eat. So I'm really excited to chat with Mike. That's why I asked him back on to hear all about his nutrition for these two things that he did. So without further ado, let's see how this interview goes. Hey, Mike, welcome back to the show. You're my first return guest, so thank you for coming to chat with me again today.
Yeah, thanks for having me be your first return guest. That's awesome.
Yeah, extra special. So a lot has happened since we spoke about a year ago. Let's see. You won all 3 events of the Triple Crown 200 soon after we recorded, and we both had babies. How old's your baby now?
She is about 11 months.
Ah, okay.
And
so mine just turned 1.
Yeah, I was gonna say yours is about 1.
Yeah. So we both had babies, second babies. You moved to Colorado and then moved back to Utah. The world went completely bonkers in the pandemic. And let's see, then you decided to run 100 miles on 0 calories and succeeded. And then last month you set the men's supported fastest known time, or FKT, on the Colorado Trail, which for anyone who isn't aware is 485 miles. So I would say that's quite a year.
Yeah, it's you know, I lost my job in early April, so I
I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you. I mean, yeah, it's been hard, but it's provided me opportunities to do some things with running that I've never really thought about before. So it worked out.
Have you really not thought about running 100 miles with 0 calories though? I feel like you have. Maybe not.
No, I've thought about that for a couple of years, but I mean, this was the year I decided to initiate on it. Yeah.
So for sure. So obviously, you know, those last 2 things, the FKT, that was last month, I believe, and the 100 miler, those are the 2 main reasons I wanted to bring you back, just to kind of chat through it. I want to hear about all your, you know, your nutrition, or I guess lack thereof, for the 100 miler. I know, right? Going on a nutrition podcast to talk about how you didn't take on nutrition. Slightly strange, my listeners may be thinking. But, you know, it'll still be interesting to talk through. And I know you've already done all the media rounds on that one, as it happened back in May. But I'm not sure you actually had a chance to talk it over with a dietitian. So I wanted to give you one. Yeah, I didn't think so. So I wanted to give you one more opportunity to share your experience of running 100 miles on 0 calories. Again, amazing accomplishment. And before we start, just in case anyone is wondering, and I kind of touched on this in my intro, but just in case anyone's wondering why I, as a dietitian who does not recommend the low carb, high fat diet for athletes, am featuring you once again to talk about
this diet, and also about not consuming any calories at all while running 100 milers. Well, I mean, as I said to you, Mike, this show is all about demonstrating that there are just so many ways to fuel exercise and to be a successful athlete. And even if I don't agree with them all, I can still absolutely just admire and respect and appreciate things that people accomplish. So, I'm always curious. I always love just hearing about what everyone's doing and how. So again, a huge congrats. 2 amazing accomplishments.
Thank you. And I appreciate your openness. Like I'm not, I coach athletes, and if they're interested in keto OFM, then I'll talk about it. But like, I never push it on people. Like I firmly agree that everybody's bodies works differently. So I appreciate your openness about it.
Yeah. And, maybe we can even get into a little bit, but, just the fact that, it's one of those things that, I don't know. I mean, we did touch upon it a little bit in our first episode together, although honestly, I did not have a chance to re-listen to it. It was so long ago. So I don't even remember all the things we talked about. But it's one of those things I think that for probably at least the majority of athletes that I encounter and work with, it's not really a sustainable diet for them. And I see a lot of people who just kind of dip their toes into it and aren't really I don't know. It's just really hard for many people to do it successfully. And I know for you, it's something that has worked really well. You did it a little over 3 years ago, and you've been very much dedicated to it. And that's really, as we'll get into, that led, to your success and pulling this whole 100 miler off, right? You're not just waking up one morning and be like, I'm gonna go attempt 100 miles without taking on any calories. Like that's not at all what you did.
No.
So listeners, this is not so this is a do not try this at home warning. Mike, I was very clear with this. Like, I do not recommend doing this, but again, I think it's just unbelievable what the human body can accomplish. And to my, knowledge, that's basically why you wanted to do it, right? Just kind of test your limits.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go run all my races on 0 calories now.
Don't think you win, especially in the mountains up and down and all that.
Yeah, no, this was just to see if it was possible. That's it.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so let's get started. So kind of, we've already started to touch on this. Like, you talked about a desire to test your limits before and other races and distances, and I know you're kind of like really into these longer stuff. You got into all the 200s, and to me, this really seems like, the ultimate test of what the body can do, or at least one test. Maybe it's not the ultimate test, but it is a test, and especially for your fat adapted body. So let's talk about how you prepared for this event. And you decided to do this actually not that long before you actually did it, right? Like a month or two, something like that?
Yeah, so you're talking about the 0 calories, not calories.
Sorry, we're going to start with 0 calories. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, no, yeah, I decided to do it about a month and a half before I did it.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, the fat adaptation, I've been doing that for 3 years. So I would say that that's one of the biggest things that helped me be ready for it. But I would say there's 2 big things that I did differently, one with my eating and one with my training. I started, so I guess doing high fat, low carb, I get asked all the time if I intermittent fast. And before I did this, I never tried it really ever. But leading up to this, for a month and a half straight, I did a 18-6 window of intermittent fasting every day. And I typically would do my runs every day around the 16-hour mark of that fast. So I was doing all of my runs.
Oh, wow.
So I was doing all of my runs for about a month and a half, 16 hours fasted. And then
how did that feel?
It was fine.
Really?
Yeah. And the more I think about it, when I had my job, I was doing all of my runs about 5-6 a.m. And those, and I would do that before I'd eat breakfast. Like, I would run, I'd come home, shower, eat breakfast, and go. So most of my running career, I've been doing the majority of my daily training runs 12 hours fasted almost. So I guess it wasn't a really big new concept for my body to have to do that. But then the other thing I started to do is I started to, I bought a heart rate monitor strap for my Suunto watch, and I started to do all of my training runs based off of heart rate. Just because the data shows that for my age, the maffetone, the Phil maffetone, equation or whatever you want to call it, the heart rate range that I wanted to shoot for was roughly 125 to 130 beats per minute. So I just started doing all my training runs and kept it in that range, did that for a month and a half, and then I went into it.
And the reasoning behind that was just to kind of keep yourself in that kind of fat burning area. Is that kind of why?
Yep. Just to get my body to running on, in a fasted state, and then get my body used to that fat burning heart rate range, because theoretically when I did my 0 calorie 100, I didn't want to tap into my glucose really.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And was it like an adjustment period, or you really just, I guess you were doing it for a while, so was it really anything that different?
I mean, the biggest adjustment was I didn't realize how much slower 125 to 130 beats like correlated to with my pace.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just kind of hard to like hold back for a month and a half and not do any kind of speed workouts or anything like that. But aside from that, there was no like transition period to any of it.
Did you feel like your pace improved by the end of that month and a half period?
That's the craziest thing with this whole experience. Like, I felt that my recovery after it was like tremendously quick. And then like there was like a 3-week period after I finished the 0 calorie 100 where like I was going out and running, and I felt like I wasn't pushing myself that hard, but like I was setting all kinds of PRs, like Strava PRs and badges that I felt I wasn't really pushing that hard to get. So there was definitely something different with my pace when I came out of that, and I don't know the science behind it.
I remember like ages ago, I was trying or contemplating doing the whole maffetone thing and the heart rate and going really slow, and then I just never had the patience for it. It didn't follow through. But I heard like this is completely separate from diet, but I heard people saying that their pace and effort level, like all of that kind of shifted. And so that's interesting. Now, you did consume water and electrolytes. So tell us a little bit about that. I know in listening, I finally did get a chance to do a little prep. We did kind of put this together last minute, listeners. I listened to, I think no, not your fault at all. I've this is actually the first interview I'm recording for my season 3. I've just slow to get this whole thing going. But no, I did listen to, I think it was Trail Runner Nation. You were talking about it. And you're so hardcore that you wouldn't even take the capsule part of your S caps. And you're like, which is, which I get the reasoning, like this was a 0 calorie thing. You want to make it 0 calories. But I guess you were just kind of getting loose salts and putting them together in a bag, dipping your finger in. How did you kind of figure out your timing? Was it just something you were practicing, or were you going by taste and feel? Like, tell us a little bit about your hydration and electrolyte consumption.
Yeah. So the capsule thing, Jeff Browning, my coach, is the one that pointed that out to me. Like when I first made the decision, I bought S caps and I was going to use S caps. And then Jeff was like, well, technically there's I don't know the amount, but he's like, there's a trace amount in a capsule. And so I ended up buying Redmond real salt, and then just on like Amazon, some bulk supplements, some magnesium citrate and some potassium citrate. And I put them each in their own individual bags, carried those with me in my vest, and then I just had bottles of water. And I tried to approach it like I would in a typical race, where I'd try to get it into my body every hour. So every hour, like you said, I'd lick my fingers, stick it in the baggies, suck it off, and then wash it down with water. So the ratio wasn't exactly, there was no science behind it. As the day went on though, like as it got hotter, or when I noticed that like my energy was starting to dip, I would do it a second time within that hour. So sometimes I was doing it twice every hour. And I mean, that just kind of came back to listening to my body and intaking it when I felt like I needed a little bit more.
Yeah. And I mean, in terms of how it felt, I read somewhere you described it as quite enjoyable, which I mean, I'm trying to imagine running. I mean, this was like, what was it, 18 some hours or so with 0 calorie. I can't even make it. Oh my God, I had to fast for lab work was a couple days ago, and I nearly died. Like, I think I had to wait until 10 a.m. to eat, and I almost like went crazy. So I'm of course not adapted to eating this way, but yeah, tell us a little bit about the experience. And I know you did it in kind of your home area. You got to see lots of friends and family. Sounds like a little block party situation. I don't know. Tell us a little bit about the actual experience.
Well, so, and to quickly speak to that, like, I saw some flack for doing this, and it's like,
oh, yeah. That's one of my questions. Don't worry.
Okay.
That's I think 2 questions from now, we're going to talk about that.
Okay. Well, to speak to like the going 18 hours without fasting aspect, it was like, I had breakfast before I did it at 5 a.m. and then I finished.
Oh yeah. What did you eat? What did you eat?
I had bacon, eggs, and then an orange. Just to top the plate.
Splurging with your carbs there.
I know. 25 grams. Orange.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And then I finished before midnight, and then when I finished, I had a protein shake. So technically, like, I ate that day. Like, I didn't even have to go a whole day without eating. So that just kind of adds a little bit of perspective to it. But yeah, I designed the route from my front door. It started at my front door. It ended at my front door. It was a big loop. I was always within cell phone service, so if something happened, I could call my wife to come get me. I ran by my sister's house. I ran by like high school. Like I grew up here, so I ran by a lot of people's houses that I knew, and they came out and greeted me and said hi and congratulated me and kept me going. And like mile 60 was my parents' house. I ran by my grandparents' grave, so it was just kind of like a big tour around the valley that I grew up in. So from that side of it, it was just super enjoyable because I love this place so much.
Awesome.
But yeah, and then in my training, like even before I became fat adapted and did the low carb high fat thing, like fasting on my training runs has just kind of always been something I've done because my stomach has agreed with that, and like I never noticed any energy dips or negatives to it. So like fasting for runs has always been a thing I've done for quite a while, and the longest I've gone
sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and like the longest run I'd done fasted before this was 32 miles, and I had no issues. So for the first 32 miles, I was just confident that I wasn't gonna run into any problems, and then once I hit mile 32, it was just kind of all unknown from there on out. And it was just, when I say it was just enjoyable, like aside from a couple energy dips, like I didn't really have any food cravings. I didn't have major bonks. It was just kind of like a consistent flow for the whole day. And it was just a lot better of an experience than I myself even thought it would have been.
Yeah. And obviously this was like, there were risks associated with this, right? Like, this is not something that is necessarily like, I mean, even with all the prep that you did, like there are some risks associated with that. And it was getting warmer and all this stuff. Once you passed that 32-mile mark, like, were you nervous about anything? Did you just feel really confident? What did your wife think? Were your parents concerned with, and I'm not talking about like people in the field, like we'll get to that. I'm more talking about just you. I know even your own coach was kind of like, I don't know, but I won't give you my blessing or whatever you were saying. But, what were your kind of thoughts about that?
I was pretty nervous after mile 32. Like, there's a guy named Mike. I don't know if it's Mikey or Mickey, but I say Mikey Skylar. He attempted this twice, and he made it to like mile 70 before he started eating. And I know he gave Jeff Brownie, my coach, some feedback because Jeff also coached him once. And basically Mikey told me, and this was almost word for word, but he was just like, you got to really dial that heart rate in. You don't want to go too fast. You got to keep those electrolytes coming in. And basically he said, well, he said if I do something wrong that I could go into muscle failure. And I
like rhabdomyolysis basically.
Yeah. And I've never experienced that. I didn't know
it's
what
scary.
Yeah. So
you don't want it.
Yeah. So basically from mile 32 to the finish, in my head, I was just like, okay, like, is something going to hit the fan any minute now? What's going to happen? And that never happens. So I was nervous for pretty much all of it.
What about your wife? Like, you have 2 little kids, like, and she was just totally on board, or are you just like, this is what I'm going to do? Like, I know she's super supportive of all the things you do, but I was just curious how she thought about this situation.
Both her and my parents have just kind of accepted that if I have an idea that I'm going to try it. Obviously, like if my wife pleads with me to not do it, then I won't do it. But sure. I think she was confident because like I wasn't going in the mountains. I was down in the valley where people like somebody could reach me in an emergency within 10 minutes just because I was
Perfect.
so many access points. I had people crewing me and pacing me for the whole thing. So people were by me to monitor how I was doing. Like in terms of
were your pacers eating?
Yeah.
Oh God, that must have sucked. Was that really hard to watch? Like your pacers are eating and you're like not eating anything?
No, I made them stay behind me, so I never really saw it. The funniest thing I thought of though, or not the funniest thing that I saw during this whole thing, one of my pacers, he paced me for like a marathon and he was going to do more, but towards the end, he called his wife to come get him. And like, he was just like, I feel really stupid saying this to you, but like, I just got to get home and get some more calories in me because I'm bonking pretty bad. So,
oh man, you're like, see ya. I'm gonna post on. Wow, that's pretty crazy. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I was listening to some other podcasts about this. I was like, oh yeah, what were his pacers doing? That must have been interesting. Well, okay, got it.
Like, the hardest part was, like I said, mile 60 or so was my parents' house, and my buddy Ben Light was gonna pace me there. But when I got there, he was like, hey, I'll meet you in an hour or so. We're all going to go inside and eat dinner together. So, my mom's home cooked meal, like that was kind of hard to walk away from that.
Yeah, because man, like, I mean, I haven't done the 100-miler and I don't think I will end up doing one. But from what I hear, like there are some highs and lows to that and, all kinds of mind stuff going on. So that's got to mess with you, especially later in your event,
Yeah.
But, yeah, you gotta just but it sounds like you were super focused and for the most part, right on targets, which is awesome. Now you did keep this course flat, intentionally to, again, keep you in that heart rate zone that you're aiming for. But normally, so I guess two questions here. So my number one question is, when you're doing these other fasted runs, I assume at some point you're not keeping your heart rate so low and you are doing some elevation or some speed or whatever. Does that still feel good to you when you're doing that fasted?
Yeah. I mean, probably 2 months before I did this, there's an island out here called Antelope Island. And it's kind of a unique place because it's one of the only places you can hit in northern Utah in the winter that's usually pretty clear of snow. It's like low, and I don't know why, but like you can go out there most of winter and get some good trail running in. So I go out there all the time. And I did it was 32 miles out there. And the elevation gain was about 5,000 feet, 4,000 to 5,000 feet in 32 miles. I didn't take any calories. And I went out there like trying to crank it and see how fast I could do without doing calories. And I did the whole thing in about it was an 850 average. Mm-hmm. So, wow. I mean, that's not like Hayden Hawks kind of a speed, but for me, like I don't get for a 32 miler with that kind of elevation and an 850 pace, like that's definitely something that's faster for me personally. So, but yeah, I had no issues, no bonking, no cramping, like I got some food on my way home and was fine. Like
and it doesn't mess you up like the rest of the day. You're not like dealing with headaches or anything else that you notice.
No, not at all.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, I do think you're pretty unique. I mean, I not to say that no one else can experience this and go and do the things that you do in terms of like, not like specifically like everything you're doing, but not to say that they can't, follow the same types of eating styles and do some of these same things. But again, I do think that, I mean, you obviously make it look very easy. I don't think it's like one of these things where, oh yeah, I'm going to run up this mountain for 32 miles and I feel great. So just, I mean, I just want to put it into perspective. I do still think that you're very unique. But again, that's why I'm having you on the show and I want to talk about it. But, and anyway, so in terms of like, let's talk about a 100-mile race that, has some elevation, isn't just a flat course. What would fueling look like for that? Or are you doing 100-milers these days? Or not these days, but like in recent memory before COVID and everything, like what typically would your fueling strategy be when you are really trying to push it and there is some elevation and it's not about fasting and that kind of thing?
So I think I think one of the reasons I do these longer distances is because I'm still struggling trying to figure out my nutrition for those 100 milers or shorter. Like aside from that 0-calorie one I did, the last 100 miler I did was Western States last year.
Oh, yeah. I think I remember that. You're talking about that. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I had stomach issues that I was puking a lot. My stomach didn't feel good. The 100-mile distance, and this sounds so weird to say, and I'm not like downplaying the 100-mile distance, but for me, it's still just a short enough distance where I haven't been able to figure out my nutrition, because for like 200 milers and above, I can eat a little bit more fat and a little bit less carbs because I'm going slower.
Exactly.
For ones where I'm going faster, I'm still trying to figure that out, actually.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. No, I was just curious. I forgot that you hadn't really done anything else, but I was curious if we had something to compare the 0-calorie run to something else. But that's really interesting. And what was your time in Western States? I guess we can't really compare because it's not flat, but just out of curiosity.
It was 21 hours.
Got it. Okay. All right. I mean, are you interested in still like trying to figure out that 100-mile racing nutrition situation? Or are you just kind of like, I'm just going to stick with what I'm good at and do the 200 plus stuff?
No, absolutely. Like, so my PR 100-miler was the Zion 100 a few years ago. Like, everything worked great at that one. It was a course that had about 12,000 feet of elevation gain, and I was able to do it in 16 hours and 50 minutes.
Wow.
So that was definitely like everything clicked at that one. And I wish
what were you eating there?
That's what I was about to say. I wish I remembered what I ate at that one.
Of course you don't remember.
Yeah. So I do know that like goos and stuff like that I struggle with. Like I seem to do quite a bit better with like real foods, fruit, applesauce, dried fruit. Like the more real it is, the better my stomach handles it.
Have you tried Spring Energy? I just started using those products over the summer when I was doing some trail running out in California, and some of their stuff is, I mean, obviously there is some carbohydrate. It's like rice based, but they have a lot of fat as well. Like I think they're all different. But some are like 250 calories will have like 19 or 20 grams of fat or something like that. So there are some carbs, but it's all real food based. And I don't know. I think it's getting more popular. Have you heard of it or tried it before?
Yeah, they're a sponsor of those 200, so they were all the aid stations.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I tried them there, and I liked them. I just think I overdid them because like.
Oh, okay, got it.
They got to a point where like I took one in during the 200 and I gagged it and puked it all up, and that was
yeah. Now you're like, no more. Yeah, I was really getting into those. I was like, oh, these are quite nice for trail runs. Okay, and let's talk recovery. It sounds like you were recovering quite nicely. You said you had a protein shake. What was kind of eating like afterwards? Were you? I think I heard you say you weren't even hungry afterwards, which isn't a surprise. Like your hormone levels were probably suppressing your appetite and all that. But yeah, tell me what eating looked like after the run.
So yeah, for a couple of days, I just stuck to some really protein-rich foods. I remember I had that protein shake. I went to bed, woke up the next day, and I had like an elk roast for breakfast. I had steak for lunch, and then chicken for dinner. I basically did something.
So no carbs in there?
I had a little bit of red potato for dinner, but that was about it. Okay. So basically, like my strategy to it is like the first day or two after, I try to just keep it more protein focused, and so that's what I did with this. And then after that, I didn't like go. I do remember last time you and I talked a lot about how much I love ice cream. I've finally gotten past the point where like I don't really care for ice cream anymore.
Really? I don't think that's humanly possible for me. So I don't want it to be humanly possible. I love it too much.
Well, the funny thing is,
ice cream.
Have you heard of Rebel ice cream?
No. What is that? So is that a pretend ice cream?
Well, it's a keto ice cream, yes.
Oh God, no! Those are all those products. I'm like major eye roll.
Well, usually me too, but
what is it?
they actually might be listening to this because they reached out to me after they listened to our podcast. So they
Oh,
might.
wait, what? Really?
Yeah, they listened to our episode.
Uh-oh. Sorry, Rebel. Sorry, I don't like. I'm a fan of, and it's not just you, Rebel. It's Halo Top. It's Arctic Zero. It's pretty much anyone that pretends to be ice cream that isn't ice cream. I'm just not a fan. That's just my opinion. But anyways, go on.
So anyway, they reached out to me and like their base for their ice cream is heavy whipping cream, so it's actually really rich.
Oh, that I do like. Okay.
Yeah, I can't stand Halo Top.
I can get behind the heavy whipping cream.
Yeah. So anyway, that's a huge tangent, but like they reached out to me, they sent me some to try, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. But for some reason, I don't really care for ice cream anymore. So after the 0 calorie 100. I had protein for a couple of days, and then I just had protein mixed with quite a bit of fruit. I was probably getting about for 2 to 3 weeks, which for anybody that follows or knows about keto, 150 grams of carbohydrates is quite a bit more than like what official keto is. So there's
what
about
is it, 50 grams. What's keto officially? 50.
Strict keto's 30.
30. Okay.
Yeah. So there's about a 3 to 4 week period where I was still getting like protein with every meal, but I was probably getting 150 grams worth of carbs from fruit for a few weeks.
Does that feel really good?
Yeah, I love fruit. That I prefer that over ice cream any day now.
Are you in your daily just diet? Are you having much fruit? I forget.
Yeah, so I'm just a mix of like keto, carnivore, OFM, primal blueprint.
What's OFM again?
Optimized fat metabolism. It's basically strategic keto. You just do keto on certain parts. We kind of talked about it in the last episode.
Yeah. Clearly, I didn't.
It's okay. Basically, the more I'm training, the more miles I'm running, the more carbs I'm eating.
Yeah. That part I do remember. I just didn't remember the OFM part. Okay, got it. Okay. And I mean, is there anything else that changed in the past year in terms of your eating aside from the unbelievable lack of desire to eat ice cream, which I still can't believe, especially because you grew up on your dairy farm. But yeah,
no, I know you'll probably cringe at this, but I
probably
like I said, like I used to just be kind of keto, OFM, primal blueprint, but now I also sprinkle in carnivore occasionally. So
what does that mean? That means like all meat all the time?
Just all animal byproducts.
What is primal blueprint? I'm like so not up with I feel like this is part of the keto intermittent fasting world. Like that's kind of what I group this all in, because when whenever someone tells me they're keto, I get a lot of people who try these things and they failed and they come to me. Like, I get like recovering keto people or something who are like, this was not for me. No, I'm just joking.
You can create a group for that.
Yeah, right. Like keto is not, I don't know. Actually, I don't even know what I would call it. Anyways, I feel like, yeah, it's probably like this world. But yeah, what is, I don't even remember what you called it. Primal what? Blueprint. What is that?
So basically, like it's a mix of it's a mix of all of it. Like primal blueprint, you can do rice occasionally, you can do potatoes occasionally. It's basically like OFM, but a little bit less strict. So like after a long run, I'll have rice. I'll have like sushi, or I'll go get a burrito bowl without the tortilla at Chipotle or something. It's basically like it's still low carb focused, but it opens the window up a little bit more to other foods such as rice, basically.
Do you ever there are just so many labels and diets and all that stuff that makes your head spin. Can't you just eat the way you want to eat and just not label? I don't know. This is just some random I'm having right now. You're listing all these different things. You're just doing what works for you. And kind of crosses lots of different categories. Some people are really strict like this and strict that. And I mean, it just sounds like you're kind of doing what works for you at different points in your training and life, and with some flexibility, I guess. But I mean, normally, are you still intermittent fasting now, or is that not that just specifically for the 100?
No. So, I mean, my coach has tried talking me out of it, but I feel so good intermittent fasting. So I basically do it. I do it every day, basically.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Whenever
I'm
I
always
don't,
curious about that.
whenever I don't do it, I feel bloated. I feel sluggish. Like like intermittent fasting, it helps me sleep better. I feel like leaner. I feel more energized. And I know it just sounds funny. Like I feel like I'm like trying to preach a religion to somebody, but like, like exactly like you said, like I eat in ways that makes me feel good and perform what I feel is good for me. And intermittent fasting is one of those things that I do and feel good doing it.
So when you finish, like I think I read somewhere you eat between 1 and 7.
Yeah.
When do you typically finish, or like do you time it so that you eat right after you finish a run to kind of help with recovery, or are you like, what does that look like
I mean,
typically?
there's no structure to it, honestly. Like today I finished my run at 11:30, so and it just barely turned 1 where I am right now, and it'll probably be another 30 minutes before I eat, and I feel fine.
No, I'm so sorry. I prevented you from having lunch.
Oh,
I feel so
like I
bad.
said, I'm not craving anything right now, so I'm fine.
Oh my goodness. Wow. And do you feel like you're able to really get enough in that window? Like, do you feel like you're
Oh
just like
yeah.
stuffing your face for 6 hours? Like you're just eating a ton?
I mean, I don't feel like I'm like eating a ton in that window, but like the food I'm eating is very calorie and fat dense, and I mean, I stopped tracking it, but a month or so ago I was tracking it to make sure I was getting enough calories, and I mean, I almost had to like backstep a little bit because I was getting above 4,000 calories in that window.
And that doesn't make you feel sick or heavy or anything like that. It feels good to you.
Yeah, I feel great.
Huh? Well, good for you. I mean, again, I think I think you're very unique. I think most people could not do what you do in a sustainable way that didn't interrupt their life. Like, and
Yeah.
those are the key pieces, right? Like, I think a lot of people, people are being social or drinking or doing, whatever it is, go have dinner. I mean, I guess you kind of make it work, but I imagine too, the way that you're eating, especially with all that meat, that must be so expensive. I mean, I don't know where you
Yeah.
typically getting your meat from, is especially if you're getting like really high quality stuff, which I bet you are. I mean, I don't know, maybe not, but I imagine, especially because I don't know, whenever you look at like paleo or keto, it's like grass fed organic beef and all this stuff, which is great, but it's so freaking expensive, right?
No,
I don't know.
it is. But the fortunate thing about where I live, Cache Valley is like dairy farm central. And I
Okay.
like you said, I grew up on the dairy farm, so I still have a lot of connections to dairy farmers. So,
Mm.
for example, we have a deep freezer in our garage, and a month or two ago, I bought a quarter of a cow from a family farm that I
Oh my
know.
God.
And so, I
Are
mean,
you like cutting that up yourself?
no, they take it to a butcher for me.
Got it. Okay. I was like, whoa, that must be a big deep freezer. You're like starting a quarter of a cow.
But I mean, a quarter of a cow, like from a local farmer and buying it in that kind of bulk, like the average came out to like $2.99 a pound.
Wow, that is cheap.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the way to
Okay,
go.
got it. Do you ever hunt or no?
No, I wish, I wish I see people like Cam Haynes, and I have a bunch of friends who are hunters, and like my brother-in-law just got an elk a week ago, and just like, hunting's obviously like a conflicting concept around the world, but
Yes, it is.
I mean, like somebody like my brother-in-law who just got this huge elk, and like now he has like two deep freezers just full of elk meat for him and his family. If you're gonna eat meat, then I think hunting is something that's something to look into.
Yeah, no, I just asked because when I had Travis Macy on the show a while ago, we were chatting about, because he hunts, and I think he actually writes or he trains people to hunt as well. Like,
Oh,
I mean, in
cool.
terms of like actually like physically, because it's obviously very physically demanding and you're out there for a while, whatever. But so we were talking a little bit about that. So it just, I don't know, came to my mind. What was I gonna say? Actually, let's talk now about we'll come back to some other questions I had, but let's talk about the reactions you got when you did the 0 calorie 100, which I keep saying, and it just sounds very strange, 0 calorie.
Yeah.
That sounds a little bit strange. But anyways, 0 calorie 100 miler it generated quite a bit of media attention, both positive and negative. And I remember messaging you and, just, wishing you congrats and hearing that you got a lot of pushback, especially from the nutrition world, which I can understand. Like, this isn't a zero risk situation. And, again, like a lot of people caution against eating the way that you eat in terms of like in the endurance world. Well, a lot of people also are big fans of being fat adapted and going down that path, but it's very controversial. And as also as we discussed, you weren't going out there being like, everyone should do what I'm doing. Yeah. You were saying, this is what I want to do for myself. This makes sense for my own body. I just want to share it with you. This is my journey kind of thing. So I think, it's just a super contentious area, especially for dietitians. And especially I saw that you are coaching and you are offering some nutrition advice. That's like a whole other contentious area of advice, like non-dietitians giving out nutrition advice, which we do not have to get into today. But I did want to bring up the debate here in terms of like what you experienced. And I know you started to bring that up. So why don't you share a little bit about that here?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest controversy was that, the concept of fasting is just plain out starving yourself. That I read an article somebody wrote on me, and in there I talked about how I allow myself to eat between 1 and 7, and somebody for example commented on that and said he allows himself to eat between 1 and 7. That's an eating disorder, only allowing myself to eat certain amounts of time. And then just the fact that me doing this and my sponsors sharing that I did it is basically me and them encouraging or promoting, not promoting, but basically encouraging a lifestyle that includes an eating disorder, and that people who have eating disorders like anorexia, for example, that they might get triggered when they see something like that and fall back into that. So the biggest
what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I obviously don't want somebody to fall into anorexia because of something I have done. But so the biggest thing I thought about with that, the thing I want to know is why nutrition is such a sensitive subject among runners, because, and the reason I asked that, for example, let's talk about potentially alcoholism. Ultra runners have an addictive personality, and I know quite a bit of runners who are recovering alcoholics, but that doesn't stop certain races from having beer or whiskey at their aid station, having a beer garden at the finish. So if we're going to talk about nutrition, then why don't we talk about all these other aspects that could help others fall into bad habits?
That's an interesting thing to bring up. Yeah, I didn't actually think about that before.
So,
I mean,
if it's going to be one thing we're going to talk about and say that we shouldn't be talking about what I did, then we should start looking into other areas as well and make sure that we're supporting everybody in all aspects, honestly.
Yeah, I think that it's really important about just the context and history of people. I mean, in terms of you, you are in, the 2 times I've talked to you in depth and the little messaging here and there we've done, I mean, I don't get the sense that you are struggling with an eating disorder, right? This is just something you're really open to just exploring things. You found a way of eating that works for you. I mean, you are sharing it with others. You want to know more, and clearly, I mean, in terms of bring or supporting, you were talking about your sponsors or writing articles on things. I remember reading one, there was a big asterisk being we do not support doing this, disclaimer, which I completely get. And even I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm going to be attacked from other dietitians being I can't believe you're giving it or bringing attention to this. I mean, who knows? I don't really care. But, but who knows? Maybe people are I can't believe you're talking about keto on your podcast. Again, we can, I think really some things work for certain people, and I still believe that for the majority of people, they're just not going to this way of life is probably not going to work with their life.
Right.
Because at least that's what I've seen. I honestly believe that. I don't necessarily, and in terms of like if it's healthy and the health repercussions, I mean, there's all sorts of arguments there. And I know there are all kinds of arguments about sugar and carbs and grains and inflammation and that kind of stuff. And I know you're obviously a believer that this has really benefited you. But, you know, there's just like so much unknown. And I think we are still learning so much about nutrition. But what we do know, like, you know your body better than anybody else. I don't know your body. No one else knows your body. You don't know my body, you know, like, and I think a lot of it is just figuring out what works for you. Now, of course, if you're going to like a nutrition expert, like a dietitian or whatever, like we're not going to be recommending keto and that kind of stuff, because again, you know, in terms of, well, for multitude of reasons, but again, it doesn't mean that if someone wants to experiment with something and they find that it works, that's fine. Like, I mean, we talked a little bit about this in our first episode, that, you know, most people don't want to live a life without ice cream or whatever it is, you know,
Right.
like I would be miserable. I don't care how fast I run. Like I would be so sad, but it sounds like you're just as happy as a clam. Like you're not suffering. So again, it really is what works, you know, I don't know.
Well,
but go ahead.
I do enjoy what I eat, quite a bit, but I also tell people all the time too, like, the reason I was led down this path and stuck with this path is because it does work for me. And I never would have came down this path if I was able to run as good as Courtney DeWalter and eat.
Yes, I remember us talking about that.
Like, it's not like I was like, man, I hate these nachos. I hate this ice cream. I'm going to go be strict. Like, I was just trying to figure out what worked for me. And unfortunately, I cannot eat like her and run like her.
Yeah. And you know what, and this is always what I talk about with clients is like, what is the cost associated with this thing that you're trying to get to, you know, and is that cost worth it essentially? So for you, it's worth it because you feel good. You're still enjoying the food that you're eating and you're performing at a level that's awesome. And you're a professional athlete. Like, so it makes sense for you, but for for other people who are recreational runners or whatever they are doing, or maybe it does lead them down a path towards disordered eating or towards an actual eating disorder, because that's like going back to that part of what we were discussing, like that's a real concern. And a lot of people kind of, skip from one fad diet to another or lifestyle or whatever you want to call it. And they're really just looking for different ways to restrict. And that's like a totally different thing though. It's different from what you're doing. So people who have already kind of disordered eating tendencies, and then they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to restrict my eating to 1 to 7 p.m. Like that's different than what you're doing. And we have to be very clear about that, right? So I do see people who do have very complicated relationships with food and disordered eating tendencies who have done things like that. So it's like when it's something like that, yeah, we have to be really cautious. But again, if you're actually looking at the whole picture of what you did, how you prepared for it, how you're approaching it, and your whole attitude surrounding it, it's different. So, and it's not to say that people aren't going to be like, ooh, that's a cool idea. Let's just not eat anything while I run. Like they could basically walk away from what you did. And maybe they're not running 100 miles, but maybe they're training for a marathon, or maybe they're, I don't know, doing whatever it is that they're doing. And like, oh yeah, well, that guy didn't eat. He was just fine. So I'm not going to eat, because why waste calories on nutrition rather than like investing those calories? So I can see that argument. But quite frankly, like those types of people are going to look to anyone who's doing anything and then justify probably their disordered behaviors. Right. I don't know. When you're in the public eye, like, yes, you want to be aware of what your actions are doing, but at the same time, you can't take responsibility for everything everyone's going to do. Like you have to just live your life and do what you're going to do. I don't know. I have literally given zero thought to this. I'm just kind of rambling, but that's kind of my opinion on it, just off the cuff.
Well, I also want to point out too, like I used to be overweight, and overeating is an eating disorder. At least I think it is. Would you call overeating a disorder?
No. Well, there's binge eating disorder, which is different. And that's like a specific diagnosed thing. If you're just like sitting around like munching on things and you're overweight, that's not an eating disorder necessarily. Like maybe you're not in tune with your body, or you're eating emotionally or past the point of fullness and all that kind of stuff. But I wouldn't say that's an eating disorder. Maybe you're not really in tune with your body's cues and all that
Okay.
stuff.
Well, anyway, I grew up overeating. I gained weight. I got very overweight. And going from that to now, like I can compare how I felt then to how I feel now, and it's just a night and day difference to be able to have,
Sure.
in my mind, a healthy like control over my appetite and just only eating. Because like I said, like even though I'm in my 1 to 7 window right now, like it's not like I'm like, oh my gosh, let's end this podcast because I'm freaking hungry. Like I could talk to you for another couple hours and be fine. Like
Please, by the way, grab a snack if you want something. Oh my God, I do not want to prevent you from eating.
like I said, I'm totally fine right now. Like I'm not eating.
Okay.
Like, I just, yeah.
Out of curiosity, why did Jeff Brownie discourage you from continuing intermittent fasting? I mean, I know what I would, but why would he do that?
He hasn't really told me.
Oh, okay.
The gist I'm getting out of it is that that affects my recovery.
Yeah, well, I would think so too. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, we spent way more time on this than I thought, but I guess we digressed a bit. I want to talk about your FKT that you recently sent. That was like last month. And I don't know, I'm sure you've done media on that already too, but I didn't really get a chance to look into it. But I want to hear, so you did the Colorado Trail, and that was after Courtney Dolwater attempted it. And oh man, talk about scary stuff. And she was in the hospital from I forget what she had, like some pulmonary situation. And then you were basically like, oh yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
I mean, you were not really, this is another one where you weren't exactly like super prepped and, planning for it, right? Like talk me through that.
No, yeah. I mean, if you can be as little prepped as possible for something, it's definitely, I was definitely as little prepped as possible as I could be for this. But yeah, basically, like I saw Courtney, I was following her along. I was looking at doing my own FKT. And then when I saw that she unfortunately had to pull the plug, I reached out to her to congratulate her for what she did, say I'm sorry that she couldn't make it. We started talking about the Colorado Trail, and I was like, yeah, I want to do my own FKT, and I might look at the Colorado Trail. And she's like, oh my gosh, you should totally do it. Like, just go do it. Like, you'll totally crush it. And like, first of all, that shows a lot about her. Like, I'm pretty sure she was still in the hospital.
Oh God.
And she's like,
amazing. I love her.
Yeah. And she's encouraging me to go do it. She gives me advice. I know that she connected, or I don't know if she connected, but Ben Light, my crew chief, connected with her husband, Kevin, and they talked about crew points and stuff like that. So like the DeWalters were super, super supportive, and basically like, she's like, if I didn't have her blessing, I wouldn't have gone for it.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
So she did that in I want to say it was like August 10th is my guess, like early August.
Yeah.
And then I went for it September 14th, so about a month later.
Oh my goodness. And I read like the one article I did read about this, like apparently you didn't realize it was almost all above 10,000 feet or something. Oh my God.
I had no idea.
Wow. So yeah, let's talk about nutrition for that. So you were eating on this run. I'm happy to hear. And but I did see that you were struggling to get nutrition in. What was going on there?
I went into it like I had fruits, I had like gels, I had granola bars, I had a bunch of stuff to go with me in between the spots. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, like on the first day, all of that stuff, none of it sounded good.
It didn't sound good. Like, did you try it, or like you had a reaction to it, or you're literally like, I can't eat this?
No. So like the first spot before I saw my crew was 20 miles. That 20 miles, I was eating everything. Everything was fine. But then when I got to the crew spot to refill, I like looked at all of my options, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want any of this.
Which part were you, like what gels and stuff were you taking with you?
I was using Martin.
Have
you heard of them?
Oh yeah, I've tried them. It's good.
Yeah, so I was using Martin. I had Rowdy granola bars, and like usually those things work for me. They're great, but for some reason they just didn't sound that good. So I ended up going about the strategy, and this kind of like adds a little bit to my stomach and how I can just intake a lot of calories and it doesn't bother me. But I ended up, so my brother's a kitchen manager at a Brazilian steakhouse, and he was able to talk his superiors into is probably like 20 pounds of meat that they gave me.
Wow.
And it was all pre-cooked. There's like steak, bacon wrapped in steak, brisket, sausage. It was like a big.
I can't even imagine running on that. Oh my God. It makes my stomach turn.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Okay.
So basically, like every aid station I would get to where my crew was, I would eat some steak, and then I would drink a protein shake that had about a cup of heavy whipping cream in it.
Oh my God.
So I want to say
you're getting a lot of calories.
Yeah, it was about 2,000 to 3,000 at every pit stop, and then I just kind of.
How long were you like? How long would you wait before running? Like, were you literally eating it, and then were you walking? Were you running right away? Like, were you giving yourself some time, or like that's it? Two like all this heavy stuff, protein, fats, and then off you go.
I mean, aside from like areas where I was like gonna sleep, it was basically come in, take my shoes and socks off, eat some food, put my shoes and socks on, and leave. So there was a few spots that I stopped to take a nap, and I was able to let the food digest a little bit more. But a lot of the times it was just in and out, and it nothing. Really, I didn't puke once, so that was a plus.
Wow. And what kind of protein shake are you taking?
So I mix. I have Gnarly. They're one of my sponsors. It's just like a whey-based protein, and then I also mixed in a scoop of collagen from Primal Kitchen.
Okay. Were you doing any carbs at all then at the aid station, or not really?
I the first crew spot I tried some sushi. That didn't sit well. Basically the only carbs that I was doing for the majority of the Colorado Trail was in form of potato. I had a lot of sweet potato fries. I had sweet potato fries during an event is like one of my A+ foods.
I think sweet potato fries pretty much any time is an A+ food. But
I know.
Definitely during an event with some extra salt.
Yeah.
Money.
Oh yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Nice.
I
did have a gluten-free pizza at one spot, so that was.
Wait, are you gluten-free?
I just avoid it because I believe it's inflammatory.
Okay. I disagree, but yes, cool.
Yeah.
That's fine. I respect your belief. Okay. And anything else to kind of point out in the nutrition stuff?
So this is kind of funny, and I know you're gonna think it's you're gonna totally disagree with me.
Probably.
Well, I know you're going to because you just said you disagree about the gluten. But so I strained my quad at mile 390, and roughly mile 100, 150 to 390, like I could tell something was off, but I was just able to like roll it out. I was able to stretch it out and just kind of keep it maintainable. And then at mile 390, it just went down the drain, and like I had to wrap it up, and I limped a lot of the final 100 miles. The curious thing though, before that, like over my 3 years of being fat adapted, like avoiding gluten is something I've been very good at. Before I woke up one morning, it was like day 6 or so, day 5. I woke up, my crew was outside eating breakfast, and I saw this big old box of sugary donuts. And I was like, oh man, that looks so good. So I ate a donut, and it was like my first source of gluten in years. It was like 3 hours later, my quad went down the drain, and I'm like, oh, it's that freaking donut.
And your stomach didn't get messed up at all, but from the gluten?
No stomach issues. No.
Okay.
I obviously
I can't imagine, first of all, that it's like fast acting. I don't know. I know I've heard other people say things like this, and I think I read this in like an article about the FKT for you, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it could also have just been your quad like being exhausted from like, what did you sleep? Like 5 hours in 7 something days? Like,
Yeah.
like your whole body was breaking down. I don't know. Hey, you know what? It could have been the donut. Who knows? It's nice to blame something, right?
It is very nice.
Okay. And so for the majority of the time then, were you not taking in, like, how often were your cruise stations, by the way?
They're every 15 to 35 miles.
Okay. So were you taking in anything between, or were you pretty much just going off of that huge chunk of calories you took at each station?
I mean, it was mostly the chunk of calories, but I was probably getting 100 calories an hour in between.
Oh, okay. Through what? What were you doing?
It was mostly those Martin gels, just because they had no.
Oh, okay. So you were taking them.
Yeah, they had no flavor, and like it's a Jello consistency. Yeah. So like.
Yes. No, I like them. I think they're pretty cool. Yeah. Did you take caffeine? The ones with caffeine or the ones without?
Both. Yeah. So
what was your caffeine strategy?
I just tried to keep the caffeine at night. And like towards the final 2 or 3 days, I was probably getting like 300 to 400 milligrams a night.
Oh wow. So okay.
I had some pretty big caffeine headaches after this was all over. At least that's what I think.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you finished the run, and it was 7 days and 13 hours. Was that right? Or something like that?
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay. Yep. And it's 485 miles, I think. I mean, it's just awesome. Really, really amazing. I think you beat the old time by almost a day, right?
Yeah, it was 13. So it was 18 hours.
Wow. And did you hit, I mean, I know your goal was just to get the FKT, but did you have a time in mind? Did you basically hit it, or were you slower than what you had imagined?
My overall like dream goal was to do it in 6 days and 23 hours. So I could say I did it in less than a week. So
got it.
I was off by 20 hours.
I know us runners really like those like big, nice round things, like less than 7 days. I guess that sounds a little bit better than over 7 days. Yeah. But still, I mean, it's so arbitrary. I mean, the fact that you did this alone is just amazing. Really, really awesome. So let's talk recovery. So it's been about a month. How are you feeling now?
Yeah, the recovery from this has definitely been the longest I've had to recover from something.
But it's also the longest you've ever run, right?
Yep.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I mean, like I said, I strained my quad, so like, usually like during recovery, like I'll run, even if I'm like super tired, I'll try to like run a mile, maybe even, or go for a bike ride, or just some kind of little movement. But like, there was a 2-week period where I just couldn't do anything just because my quad hurt so much.
That's probably not a bad thing, given like how sleep deprived you were and what a mess you were. Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad to rest.
No, I know. But yeah, last week I was able to start running about 45 minutes to an hour a day. This week I'm kind of at the same thing. I'm going to try to do a 3-hour run this weekend and see how I do. But yeah, like mechanically, like my quad's finally better, and no issues there. Biggest thing, it's just like just the sleep deprivation. I feel like I usually function pretty well off of 6 to 7 hours of sleep, but I've been probably getting like upwards of 10 hours of sleep a night since this.
Oh, wow.
And I wake up feeling tired still. So. Oh
my God. Okay. So first of all, how are you getting that much sleep with like a less than 1-year-old and a 3-year-old now? Like, your wife must be a superhero, and or you have help with the kids, because I'm like barely hanging in there right now. My husband's definitely really helping out. If my husband were sleeping like 10 plus hours, I would be kicking him out of bed. Like at the 7-hour mark, like, okay, you're up now. So kudos to your wife, or so I don't know what's going on there.
Well, to speak to that, I actually get up with the kids.
Okay.
We put our kids to bed at 7:30 every night, and they sleep until 7:30 every day.
Oh my God, I hate you. That's not fair.
We got so lucky.
I think my older one used to do that, and we just combined them in the same room 3 weeks ago, and like it's just a disaster in the mornings. So I'm lucky if we like make it past 5. Okay, so you get that. Okay, that makes more sense. Are you going to bed like crazy early?
Yeah, I go to bed like probably 9:30, 10 o'clock each night.
Got it. Okay. And are you getting naps in too?
No, I'm not a good napper.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
Talk about. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I do most of my work from home now, and so I help out with the kids as well. I stay pretty busy throughout the day. I don't need a nap.
Got it. Okay, so that makes a lot more sense. I was like, how on earth is he sleeping this much?
Yeah.
So you're blessed with good sleepers, and that's wonderful. Tell me about recovery from a nutrition standpoint. So you finished your run. What was it like kind of coming out of that? Have you noticed like struggles getting food in, or I imagine you lost some weight. We didn't really talk about it with your 100-miler, but I know you said you lost like 10 pounds on that 0-calorie thing. Did you lose weight on this effort as well?
No, I mean, I lost probably 5 to 7 pounds, and about 4 days ago it finally came back on, and I'm at where I was when I started.
Okay. And have you been eating any differently, eating more than usual to kind of recover, or not really?
So I started 2 weeks ago doing my intermittent fasting again. So I guess this kind of plays into account how I do pretty good at just kind of eating what I feel. Pretty much since finishing the Colorado Trail until this week, like fatty red cuts of meat, which is like the basis of my diet, I haven't like had any interest in. So I've done a lot more like chicken. I've done a lot more leaner cuts of red meat. I've done a lot more fruit. So the fatty cuts of meat I haven't really craved. But this week I've been craving it again. So I'm back to like eating how I typically do. But I mean, today's the 22nd, so it's been a month since I finished. So yeah, 3 weeks out of the past month, I've kind of just been eating a lot more leaner proteins and a little bit more carbs than what I typically do.
Yeah. And I know for like the 0-calorie 100-miler, you were saying that you had planned to do like testing before, during, after originally, but then with COVID that didn't happen. And I know you're kind of planning on doing another one. In terms of just testing normally, like, do you get your lab work done normally just on a diet that is so heavy in fatty cuts of meat and all that stuff? Like, are all your lab value? I mean, this is if you're comfortable sharing, of course. Like, if you're not, then don't share. But if you're comfortable sharing, are like your cholesterol levels, all that stuff, like, does that all look good? You're young too, so that probably helps. But just kind of curious if everything looks normal, like on this eating style for you, and if it, like, what changes have happened from that perspective since you made these diet changes.
Yeah, I mean, I usually do my physical, and I'm probably at the point where I'm overdue for one right now. But the last time I went in, everything was normal.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always kind of curious.
Well, and I'm gonna do the 0-cal thing again, one more time, and actually do it.
When are you gonna do that?
So Jeff,
do you have a plan?
Well, basically, so Goo Energy has a mobile testing lab. And so Jeff Browning, he's sponsored by them. He's talking with them, and he's trying to get that set up. So basically on their timeline. I'm not sure when it'll be. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Are you going to do the same route, or are you going to change it?
I mean, if they'll come to me, I want to do the same route. But if not, then I imagine I'll go to them in California and do something there.
Okay. Cool. Anything else kind of on the horizon in terms of, I mean, I know you're still kind of coming off the FKT, but anything that's in the works that, in terms of your training, or are you just kind of chilling out for the time being?
Well, I do know there's kind of a big thing I'm planning on doing either next year or the year after, but I'm waiting to decide which year I'm going to do it before I really tell anybody.
Oh, okay.
But
I have a few guesses.
Oh, you do?
Appalachian Trail is one, but maybe not. I don't know. I feel like that's one so many people want. I don't know. Maybe like running across America or something. I don't know. I feel like there's like two big ones everyone wants to try at some point.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I will
I don't know,
not.
those are just the first two that came to mind.
Well, you'll find out in the coming weeks if you're right or not.
Okay.
But
All right. Okay. Cool.
But regardless if I decide to do that, I'm working on getting a treadmill and going after the world record for mileage on a treadmill in 48 hours. So
cool.
I'll probably do that next, late next spring, probably April or so.
But you just started your own podcast, the One Step Above podcast. I'm sorry to say I have not gotten a chance to listen to it, but that's cool that you started your podcast. What's that all about?
Yeah, I mean, so far I've just had runners on and talked to runners, but my goal is to make it basically the concept is about 30 minutes and then just talking about stuff that can help people overcome just the man, I need to have a better way of explaining it to people. I'm just trying
I've been there. I've been where you are.
Yeah. I'm just trying to appeal to everybody. It's just basically a podcast talking about great things that some people have done and just insight people can gain from it on how they can apply it to their lives.
Awesome. And the One Step Above, that's one step above the competition or something, right? I think I saw. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I was going to say competition, but I changed it to opposition. So it's more of an internal
opposition
thing. Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. I like it. Nice. Awesome. I mean, I love podcasting. It's just fun. I mean, it really is just a chance to chat with people and just have conversations, and it doesn't really matter. And if no one listens to it, who cares? Or if people listen to it, it's great. Who cares? And I mean, I'm not being paid to do this. It's just something I'm doing with the free time I don't have. God knows why. My husband's why are you still talking? No, he's very supportive. But cool. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Mike, for giving me your time. I'm sorry we ran a little over today. I really want you to have a nice, yummy meal now. And what are you planning for your lunch?
Yeah, the oven just barely went off, so I threw it in just before we started, but it's chicken breast wrapped in bacon. Oh,
that's actually yummy. I'm into that. This is totally unrelated, but I just thought I'd share this random story. I just started reading chapter books to my 3.5-year-old, and we're reading Charlotte's Web. And I don't know if you've read Charlotte's Web or remember much of the story, but it's this whole thing about Wilbur the pig, why he doesn't want to die, and they're going to eat him at Christmas time and all this stuff. So I was and my 3-year-old was why does Wilbur not want to die? And she loves bacon. And I have to say, I'm is it age appropriate to talk to my kid about where else is coming? I'm well, you know what? She should know. She should know where her food comes from, because we don't talk about that stuff enough. So I don't know. That's where bacon comes from. It comes from, unfortunately, from Wilbur, but that's okay. So, I was how do I explain this in a way that makes sense? Well, some animals are raised as pets and some are raised to be food, and that's okay. And I think it went over her head, but I don't know. Do you talk to they see you eating all of this meat. Do you talk to your older one about where food comes from, especially if you have a quarter of a cow that you bought?
Yeah.
Do you talk about that stuff?
What's that?
Do you talk about that stuff ever with your 3-year-old?
Yeah, we don't have conversations about it, but I'm starting to, and to some other people, this might sound morbid, but like you said, I'm trying to make them aware. But it's instead of saying, "Hey, Killian, do you want to come eat some sausage?" I'll say, "Hey, Killian, do you want to come eat some pig?" So I'm starting to reference the animals. So at first he was "Come eat pig." It sounded really silly to him, but he's starting to call them what they're called.
Yeah. It's such this weird thing because, and I even find in myself that I'm just disassociating from the animal. I'm eating chicken, but I'm not thinking about the chicken, or pork, and you don't really think about the pig, or or beef, not the cow. And I don't know. And I go back and forth between how much meat I actually eat, but I do eat meat regularly. And I don't know, just reading Charlotte's Web the other day, I was just it got me thinking about it. So anyways, totally random tangent. I don't even know how I got there. Anyways, I can do what I want because it's my podcast, Exactly. Anyways, Mike, thanks again. Enjoy your meal, and really a pleasure talking to you again. Congrats again on everything. And I can't wait to hear about this big thing you're doing soon, and to see how your next 100-miler on 0 calories goes.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, of course. Anytime. Have a good one.
And that wraps up today's interview with Mike McKnight. I hope you enjoyed our sometimes rambling discussion, but no, it was really fun talking with Mike. I did forget to ask him to mention his website and Instagram handles. So if you are interested in giving him a follow or visiting his website, his Instagram handle is the low-carb runner, and his website is low-carb-runner.com. And you can also find his podcast on there, which I will definitely be checking out myself. And just another favor I always ask you guys, but if you haven't already given me a rating and review on iTunes, I would be forever grateful for that. And just sharing the show with your friends if you enjoy it. Always, trying to get the word out. It would be great. Again, this is for a fun project, but I'm still trying to grow my audience and share it with as many people who would like to listen to it. And so that's it for today, and I look forward to the next show. Bye.